Hi guys, so you may or may not have heard the news by now that the Trump administration is going to put sanctions on the privately owned, the state-controlled oil of Venezuela. And I really think that combined with the sanctions on oil with Iran, this scene is unfolding now. So I'm just going to play it because I think there's a couple of things that are happening or about to happen that we can pretty clearly see. So 1 second. So let's say that this is the oil situation with Venezuela. The scene evolves and keeps on going until we get onto the Statue of Liberty and the tsunami coming forward. And belief is that's coming around February the 3rd. That's the kind of thought on that. The swirling pattern above, I think, is linked to the electricity going out, which would be EMP blackout, but also the polar vortex. So we have the winter scenario. Then I think we've already had the situation with the children and the abortion bill in New York, which took place on the 22nd of January, I believe. So I think that that's already happened. This part, we'll skip forward because the Antichrist part is kind of like a break in between the story, although it is part of it. Then we get to this part where I think we've already had Israel launching their attacks on Iran. We already had the US hitting a mosque in Syria. And now we're waiting for the Donald Trump situation and Iran's retaliation, which they are getting ready for. At the same time, we then have the volcanic eruption in the same scene, so assume possibly same day, as well as the tsunami. And obviously, if we've got the volcanic eruption, landslide scenario, then we'll have the tsunami scenario. So that all seems to be tied together, and that the time frame is looking at between January the 30th and February the 5th. And then the scene continues to evolve, as we know. We get to see the top of the mosque, which could be interpreted as a dome, which could be a reference to a number of things, but we've got at least 4 stadiums on watch: Atlanta, Super Bowl, New Orleans, Boycott Bowl, concert for the Saints, the O2 Arena for the Peter Kay comedy show, and the London Stadium, or the Olympic Stadium, or the Queen Elizabeth Stadium, they call it all three, for the West Ham versus Liverpool football game. And obviously there's a lot of emphasis on football, so keeping an eye out for something occurring during those events. Obviously at the O2, there's a university right next to the O2 Arena, which is called Ravensbourne University, a reference to ravens there. Obviously in New Orleans in 2013 is where the Ravens played at the Superdome Stadium there. So again, possible reference to ravens there, and some sort of explosion, ceiling collapse possibly. So keep an eye on that. And that, again, the Middle East scene here, we do have the volcanic eruption in the background. We do have the tsunami coming forward. We do have death. So that seems to be tied in to the scene I was just talking about before. 1 second. Haven't quite got it fixed yet. Should be by tomorrow. When I hit it, it seems to stop. So those are all those scenes unfolding there. Now, as I said, the news is that the Trump administration is going to be putting sanctions on Venezuela. So I'm going to play that video for you guys now, and after that I'll end the video. So have a good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and may the Heavenly Father bless you.
Courageously spoke out against the corrupt and illegitimate regime of Nicolas Maduro. Maduro must do what's right and allow for free, fair, and credible elections in accordance with democratic principles. To speak more about U.S. policy towards Venezuela and to take your questions, I'd like to welcome to the podium National Security Advisor, Ambassador John Bolton, Secretary of the Treasury, Stephen Mnuchin, and Director of the National Economic Council, Larry Kudlow. And after that, I'll be up to take other questions of the day. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much, Sarah. As you know, on January the 23rd, President Trump officially recognized the president of the Venezuelan National Assembly, Juan Guaido, as the interim president of Venezuela. Venezuela's National Assembly invoked Article 233 of the country's constitution to declare declare Nicolas Maduro illegitimate. This action was a statement that the people of Venezuela have had enough of oppression, corruption, and economic hardship. Since then, 21 other governments in the region and across the world have joined the United States in recognizing Guaido as Venezuela's interim president. Today, and I'll turn the podium over to Stephen Mnuchin for this purpose, we're going to announce sanctions against Petróleos de Venezuela, Sociedad Anima, or PDVSA, as it's known by its Spanish acronym, the state-owned oil monopoly. We have continued to expose the corruption of Maduro and his cronies, and today's action ensures they can no longer loot the assets of the Venezuelan people. We expect, and Secretary Mnuchin will go into this in more detail, that today's measure totals $7 billion in assets blocked today, plus over $11 billion in lost export proceeds over the next year. We also today call on the Venezuelan military and security forces to accept the peaceful, democratic, and constitutional transfer of power. And to a certain extent, this has already begun. We have seen Venezuelan official and military personnel heeding this call. The Venezuelan defense attaché here in Washington recognized President Guaido a few days ago, and just within the past hours, the first consul of Venezuela's consulate in Miami, Scarlett Salazar, has also declared for interim President Guaido. I call on all responsible nations to recognize interim President Guaido immediately. Maduro has made clear he will not recognize Guaido or call for new elections. Now is the time to stand for democracy and prosperity in Venezuela. I reiterate that the United States will hold Venezuelan security forces responsible for the safety of all U.S. diplomatic personnel, the National Assembly, and President Guaido. Any violence against these groups would signify a grave assault on the rule of law and will be met with a significant response. Now let me give the floor to Stephen Mnuchin, who will describe the sanctions that we're imposing.
Thank you. Today, Treasury took action against Venezuela's state-owned oil company, PDVSA, to help prevent the further diversion of Venezuela's assets by former President Maduro. The United States is holding accountable those responsible for Venezuela's tragic decline. We will continue to use all of our diplomatic and economic tools to support interim President Guaido, the National Assembly, and the Venezuelan people's efforts to restore their democracy. PDVSA has long been a vehicle for embezzlement, for corruption, for Venezuelan officials and businessmen. Today's designation of PDVSA will help prevent further diversion of Venezuela's assets by Maduro and will preserve these assets for the people of Venezuela where they belong. The path to sanctions relief for PDVSA is through the expeditious transfer of control to the interim president or a subsequent democratically elected government who is committed to taking concrete and meaningful actions to combat corruption. Today's actions against PDVSA follows my determination that persons operating in the Venezuelan oil sector may now be subject to sanctions. Today, OFAC also issued a number of general licenses that authorize certain transactions and activities with PDVSA for limited periods of time to minimize any immediate disruptions and support of ongoing humanitarian efforts. CITGO assets in the United States will be able to continue to operate, provided that any funds that would otherwise go to PDVSA instead will go into a blocked account in the United States. Refineries in the United States have already been taking steps to reduce the reliance on imports from Venezuela. Those imports have fallen substantially in recent months. We have also issued general licenses to ensure that certain European and Caribbean countries can make an orderly transition. We continue to call on all of our allies and partners to join the United States in recognizing interim President Guaido and blocking Maduro from being able to access PDVSA funds. Thank you with that, and I'd be happy to answer some questions.
That's your goal, but you mentioned the word significant response. How do you define significance?
Well, we're not going to define it because we want the Venezuelan security forces to know how strongly we think that President Guaido, the National Assembly, the opposition, and most importantly, American personnel are not harmed. This is an unequivocal statement on our part.
Is there any circumstance under which American forces would get involved?
Look, the President has made it very clear on this matter that all options are on the table.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Secretary. You explained that there are some actions being taken here to mitigate some of the impact on the U.S. oil market. Can you walk us through those and explain how U.S. oil imports from Venezuela will be affected? What's going to happen with the money, and where do you think that is going to have some impact on the oil market globally?
Sure. Well, let me just comment that we will be releasing FAQs with the general licenses to explain a lot of these issues, but effective immediately, any purchases of Venezuelan oil by U.S. entities, money will have to go into blocked accounts. Now, I've been in touch with many of the refineries, and there is a significant amount of oil that's at sea that's already been paid for. That oil will continue to come to the United States. If the people in Venezuela want to continue to sell us oil, as long as that money goes into blocked accounts, we'll continue to take it. Otherwise, we will not be buying it. And again, we have issued general licenses, so the refineries in the United States can continue to operate. So I expect in the short term very modest impacts on the U.S. refineries. We've been working with them closely on these issues.